We're making a transition this week, moving from the grand epic poetry that we saw in Homer and Hesiod into a different kind of writing. We're going to have a look at the Homeric hymns. Now, these hymns are so called because they're hymns. In Greek, the term hymnos means a song in praise of a divinity. They're called Homeric hymns because they're written in a Homeric style, and they're actually claimed to be written by Homer. But what we think is much more likely is that these hymns are written by schools of people that follow Homer and that write hymns in his style, and as a kind of homage to him, they go ahead and claim that Homer wrote their story. It's unlikely to have been an attempt to try to pass off a kind of plagiarized copy to claim Homeric lineage. Instead, it's just a claim by the author that what I'm writing is done in praise of Homer and a way of showing honor to him. No, the subject of the praise of any of these individual divinities is the god to whom the hymn is given. Individual hymns honor individual divinities. We're going to get to know these divinities now and hear about what their lives are like. They're a little different than yours and mine. In Theogony, we had an early precursor of this in our course. The opening of Hesiod's Theogony, recall, is a long story in praise of the Muses, where Hesiod starts off, sings about them, tells about his personal relationship with them, sings about their specific ways of being in the world, and then he closes off his opening to the Theogony with a praise of the Muses, saying, goodbye, Muses, and I hope you remember me fondly and kindly. We'll see that these are qualities that show up in these other Homeric hymns as well. So we've already kind of seen an example of this genre in the introductory portion, the Praise of the Muses, that starts off Hesiod's Theogony. For what we're going to be reading in this class, just two of what survived from a couple of dozen different hymns that survived from antiquity, we're going to focus in on just two of these, the Homeric hymn to Apollo and the Homeric hymn to Demeter. Now, you'll see from the larger collection of hymns that exist out there, there is more than one hymn to Apollo and there's more than one hymn to Demeter. We're only in our class going to focus on the long extended ones. The short one, the short hymn to Demeter and the short hymn to Apollo, actually very short. You'll see clearly which ones we're talking about. We're reading the longer ones. These hymns are two particularly rich ones, particularly long and extended ones that survive from the corpus and give us a window into common themes in this genre of writing. Now, in the hymns, we're going to see and exhibited a kind of style that will be reminiscent of some of the things we've seen in the epic poetry of Homer and Hesiod, but some things also that are a little bit different. They do indeed use the same meter that Homer and Hesiod did, this dactylic hexameter. There is also a similar kind of diction in the Greek. We mentioned when we looked at Homer that actually Homer's language that he uses is a little strange. It's pastiche, drawn from lots of different dialects around the ancient Greeks. Also with these Homeric hymns, they'll draw from that same kind of Homeric register of drawing connections between the many different aspects of ancient Greek. We're going to see some stylistic measures that are kind of similar too. There'll be uses of similes, some digressions, and pieces of this that we'll note as we go along. There are narrative arcs present in these hymns, some use of narrative in that kind of Homeric way that introduces us to really intense stories that are happening to our characters, but oftentimes we'll see that narrative is used more like the way that, say, Hesiod uses narrative, as one device among many to structure the kind of saying that a person wants to make, the kind of engagement that a person wants to make with the material. None of our poets are going to feel wedded to having to tell us some clean, clear, linear story. They're just going to get all the good stuff about this god in there that they possibly can. We'll see some interruptions along the way, some digressions, some back and forth movement in the narrative, some nonlinear things. Also, hymns like to use lists in that way that Hesiod did. We'll see long lists of places or of people or events, and those lists are again characteristic of the same kind of impulses that drove them in Hesiod's case, an idea of total inclusiveness, trying to make sure everything is told. There would have also been some qualities of the virtuosity of the poet to demonstrate, look, I can even sing this long list of proper names from memory. And all of this is going to enter into the context of what the lists are all about. One theme that is common that we're going to see in the stories, just like we did with Hesiod, lots of different traditions are going to be being sewn together right before our eyes. The poet will make reference to places that claim some direct linkage to the god that we're studying. Say they have a temple that exists in their town. Lots of places might have temples that exist to the god that we're interested in. What typically happens in a hymn is that all of these places get some kind of calling out in the story. They get pulled out and fronted so that the people who have a temple to Apollo or to Demeter or whoever the god might be in the hymn have a chance to see their own name of their town represented in the story. They're going to operate according to different kinds of techniques than some of the things that we've seen. That we're going to have some direct address where we actually talk directly to the god itself. We're going to have lots of praise, so lots of things that come out to tell us how great and grand this god is. Sometimes we're living past great things that that god has done. We'll have some narrative elements that come in. At the end, after we're done, we're going to have a goodbye, where the poet says, "Please remember me fondly, divinity. I've always been nice to you, and now also try to be nice to me," asking for a kind of divine favor at the end. We're going to see themes, characteristic and common across these different hymns. One theme that comes out very strongly is a sense of actually getting to know the god. It's like you're standing, right here next to the divinity. Hello, Apollo. We're going to get a chance to learn what it's like to be you. And what we're going to find out is that some things that we might think in our standard intuition about the god's lives are actually not quite what the god's life is really like. The god, first of all, is going to be born. Here's Demeter. She's looking over us and keeping an eye on us. The god's going to be born. These gods didn't exist for all time. They actually have a moment when they're born, similarly to what we saw in Hesiod's Theogony. Their lives are not simple and straightforward. Typically, there's some kind of a struggle. Maybe they have to find a place to be born. They have to find a place to live. They want to try to have a temple. They want to try to find some place on earth that they can call their own house. And that requires some work. They have to convince people to build a temple for them. They have to find an appropriate spot. They suffer oftentimes some kind of pain or isolation as they're trying to make their way to find these spots. They're also trying to make sure they secure areas of their purview so they have some exclusive claim over certain kinds of things in the universe. Apollo is going to have a claim over music, prophecy, medicine, the sun, and archery. Demeter is going to have a special claim over grain and fertility. Finding what these things are and working them out with respect to the rest of the divine family is going to require some doing. It's going to take some negotiations and some moments to settle in. Part of what this sense of belonging is going to be for these gods is they're going to have to find you and me, people like us, human beings, who are going to do nice things for them in worship and in ritual. Gods, it turns out, like it when you and I worship them. The ancient Greek gods really enjoy that, and trying to secure a situation in which they're going to get the kind of rituals and rites that they like is something that is definitely built into the lives of the gods as portrayed in these Homeric hymns. The ritual background is very important, and we're going to focus in on that in a next lecture.